Very happy to be here at Schloss Saarstein, VDP member in the Saar Valley, which is a side valley of the Mosel. And one of our really interesting exhibitors at the Cool Climate Wine Summit 2026. It's a big pleasure to be here at a real castle, how I would call it, right? In English. A Schloss in German.
Naja, the name is Schloss, but it's a fantastic house where we live here.
It's definitely, I want to say, one of the most beautiful surroundings where I did interviews so far with winemakers. So I'm quite delighted to be here. But let's maybe start with some of our open questions to get you and the estate a little bit better to know. First one, if you would not be a winemaker today, what would be the alternative?
There's no alternative. No alternative. That's my life. That's all I learned. I can do nothing than wine. So that's a question which I cannot give you an answer.
That is so the alternative to being a winemaker is being a winemaker. I love it. Okay. Second question. A person that really influenced your wine style and your perspective on wine and how you're making wine today?
It was my father.
Your father?
I studied winemaking in Geisenheim, but all I learned from my father or learned by doing.
And in which generation are you now running the estate? Was your father the first? Or?
My father bought it. My father bought it in 1956. He was a refugee from East Germany and he learned agriculture. And after the war, he started here in this wine estate, which he could buy in 1956. And I'm the second generation now.
The second generation, okay. Third question, that is a really mean one. Many people might have a little bit difficulties pointing to something. Okay. But if you should describe your personality as a bottle of wine, does a bottle of wine come to your mind that describes you?
It can only be my favorite wine, which is Kabinett.
Kabinett,
which shows perfectly the style of our region, the Saar style, with the great acidity and a bit of residual sugar to balance the acidity, and that's my wine, and that's where I can identify me.
So very balanced, but with a little bit of edges, or?
Balanced, often after some years. In the young time, it is a wine with corners and edges, but Kabinett, wait 2-3 years and you find a great wine.
Fourth question for the introduction round. It's a bit of an open statement. It's called nature. And what comes to your mind with regards to work in the vineyard and being a winemaker when you think about nature?
Nature is more my favorite than winemaking or wine selling. Because I grew up here in the middle of the nature. You took a look around the house. There's only nature. There are no neighbors. There's wood and there are the vineyards. And that's really fantastic that I grew up here. And my favorite thing which I do in the nature is hunting. On the other side, it is necessary because we have a lot of damage from wild boars and roe deers. But the great thing is to bring the nature and balance with my life and with the winemaking.
With that being said, can you give us a brief introduction to the VDP estate Schloss Saarstein? A little bit of the history. I mean, you said already in 1954? 56, your father bought the estate here. But maybe a little bit about the history of the place and...
The vineyards here, which we own, are perhaps the oldest. I think they are the oldest in the village. They were planted in the beginning of the 1820, 1830, these years. And then the vineyards the vineyards on this hill came completely into one hand. That was a man from Trier who made money in industry. So he built the winery in the beginning as a hobby. And his son, who took over the winery in 1900, he was crazy for quality, and he saw the quality which you can grow here in the Saar Valley. And he was founding member of the VDP. And that was founded in 1906 in Trier. And the former owner was founding member of VDP. And he lived here until 21, then he died, and then the estate came into a worse situation, and the quality wasn't anymore in the bottle. And after the Second World War, the family Hansen, who were owner, they said it's better to sell the estate than to spend more and more money in the estate, which is not coming back. And my father, I said to you, was a refugee from East Germany, and he learned agriculture before he took over the estate. He could buy it in 1956, and then he started here with nothing. I grew up here. I was born in 58 and grew up here, and saw nothing than wine and winemaking. And later I studied in Geisenheim, the University for Winemaking, and since 1990 I'm responsible for everything.
And you told me earlier, like when we were down in the cellar, like a lot changed since your father making wine and you making wine today, especially with you focusing on Riesling, of course, and white wines.
My father also focused on Riesling, but he grew a lot of other varieties which have no market, because in the 60s Riesling from Saar had a lot of acidity, and in the 70s the request was more and more for dry wines, and Riesling dry 50 years ago was something. Riesling dry from Saar was not easy to drink with the high acidity at this time. So my father grew a lot of other grape varieties like Müller-Thurgau, Optima, Kerner, Bacchus, and so on. But that was the first thing I changed in the 90s. Today we have 90% Riesling, then a little bit Pinot Blanc, a little bit Pinot Gris. But that's it. Riesling today with the climate change is a bit easier to drink. The acidity is not so high anymore. We still have enough acidity. We have fantastic acidity, but not comparable with the 70s or 80s. And that was one thing I changed. I went nearly 90% to Riesling, and then I changed the style of winemaking with the big cooling machine in the cellar, so we can cool the grape juice, we can cool the wines to stop the fermentation. And my father worked with a centrifuge to clean the grape juice. I do it today by settling. I wait 48 hours before the grape juice is clean, and so we let today more the nature and the time work, not with a thing like a centrifuge, which is
probably also not so good for the wine quality, isn't it? Right. No. So it's maybe another thing, like improvement. Yeah. We learned what's good for making great wine, right? I mean, developed greatly over the last couple of decades. Dry Riesling is what we have in the glass. Shall we have a sip of it?
Dry Riesling, a bit aged, vintage 16, one of my favorite vintage.
That's very ripe, actually.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's such a nice like fruit profile, really going more like into the peachy characteristics, apricot characteristics.
But still fresh.
Still fresh, exactly. You have this like really fresh touch to it in the nose immediately.
Acidity perfectly balanced. 16, we had a good acidity. We had acidity which was higher than the average level of the last 10, 15 years.
And it's kind of funny, I think the development comes out really nicely, actually, especially in regards to this endless discussion about petrol or petroleum notes, because, I mean, as soon as you nerd like too much about like wine and aromas, people will tell you petroleum is a mistake. And it's really like what I learned maybe from like other tasters in my life is this is not smelling of petroleum.
No.
This is smelling of ginger, of saffron, of like really nice, delicate spices that show like the development of the wine, which is kind of really beautiful. There's something candied in it.
I'm sure this wine has 10, 15 years more.
At least, I would say, with the acidity and the structure it has in the mouth.
Look, it's clear. It is not not a color of a ripe old wine.
No, not at all. But I mean, it has a lot of backbone and substance to it, which is really nice. It's like the acidity is striking. It has a nice complex aroma profile. It has nice oily layers in the aftertaste. It's kind of
12% alcohol. It's from
12%,
our
okay.
oldest vineyard, where we wait every year until the end of the harvest before we pick it, and then we reach. We have to select the best grapes, but then we reach in a good vintage 12 and a half. But that's the highest level. Normally, our average level is 11% in dry wines.
11%, okay. And Alte Reben here means they are from when?
They were planted by the former owner. They were planted in 1943.
1943, okay, so this is pretty old. So this also like explains a lot about the concentration.
But always fantastic quality of this. I remember there's a nice story behind the Alte Reben. When I finished my studies, my father said, look, this is the oldest vineyard what we have. It was planted by the former owner, and that's the last vineyard which we have to replant. And that was in the 80s, end of the 80s. Said, okay, but everybody speaks about great wines from old vineyards. Let me make one wine of this old vineyard in a dry style. My father said, that's a vineyard which is normally good for a great Auslese. And, but he allowed me to make 1,000 liter of this old vineyard in a dry style. And it was a great wine. I think it was vintage 89. And my father tasted this wine and he said, oh, wow, it's a dry wine which I can drink. My father never drank dry wines. He sold dry wines, but he did not drink them. And suddenly he could drink a dry Riesling. That was something for me where I learned that it's important to produce a great dry Riesling here in the Saar area from old vineyards. Then you have the balance by the minerality and by everything which comes from the deep root system of these old vineyards.
And now you're talking about the root systems before, because you also told me that these old wines, they are on European rootstocks still, so they're not on American rootstocks?
Not drafted, undrafted.
Which is, I think, also something that people find very exciting in general, because we tend to say that all wines that we have in Europe today are on American rootstocks, but you actually told me also there are many places in the Mosel where the slate concentration in the soil is so high that phylloxera doesn't have really a chance to get there, right? We have mainly gray slate here that you work with?
Slate, yes.
Gray slate, okay. And then you told me earlier about the very unique feature of being here up on the hill where you are, right? You are at about, 300 meters altitude where you are located?
The house is 220 and the vineyards, the highest vineyard is 230, 240.
Okay, and the valley below where the Saar is going along the house there is fairly high in elevation, so you actually have
140 meters the level of the river in the valley.
Nice cooling winds that are coming through the valley, so you really have fairly unique cool climate conditions here.
Typical cool climate. And that's what you can taste in the wine. That's the style. And I think that's important to show the style of the region. And our style here is a cool climate wine style.
But that being said, now you said yourself, in the 70s, 80s, the dry Rieslings had acidity levels that were maybe, let's say, very difficult for some people to drink. And you said earlier also, if we can see something positive in climate change for your region, then it's maybe that acidity levels are decreasing a tiny bit and makes the wines a little bit more approachable for the everyday consumer.
We had this dry wave in the 80s. Everybody asked for dry wine, and that was for my father a time which was not so easy for him. He had to sell dry wines. Dry wine was asked. My father never loved dry wines, but he had to produce them, and that was really a time where a lot of wine drinkers changed to wines from South Europe, because the German dry wines at this time had more acidity. Today it's better. We still have the acidity. Even in vintage like 2018, we have enough acidity. but it's not anymore the level we had in the 80s or 70s. But
Fair-
on the
fair
other
enough.
side, I see that we still have a lot of space
To develop over the next couple of decades.
for the next generations. And always the Saar was the region in whole Germany where the acidity was the highest all over Germany.
I mean, you usually say also, like, if you look at the subregions of the Mosel, then I think you can read everywhere and you hear everywhere that the Saar is the coolest or coldest subregion of the Mosel, right? Definitely. So it's kind
The
of
cool sister of the Mosel, people.
the cool sister of the Mosel. I like that. Maybe could you talking about like changes also like in consumer behavior, etc. How is it today for you? Dry wine versus wines with residual sugar, maybe like approximate percentage of bottle production.
It is very stable since a lot of years, and that means half and half.
Half and half, okay.
But if you look to different markets where we sell, you will see that we sell mostly the fruity wines to foreign countries, and the dry wines we sell to the German customers.
The German customers, okay. Because I remember at ProWein, I had a short interview with Ansgar Schmitz, the chairman of the Mosel Weinverein, and he told me exactly the same, that like over the last 10, 15 years, we see this increasing trend in the Mosel, that we produce more and more dry wines, be it for still wines, but also for sparkling. It's getting drier and drier.
Changing a little bit in some countries. These countries where it changed, where it goes a bit more to the dry style, is in Europe, Switzerland. Then in Europe, Scandinavia, where we sell today half and half. Netherlands, still very sweet, very fruity. And the rest where we sell, which is China and the States, nearly 100% fruity wines with low alcohol.
With low alcohol, yeah. That's also like a trend that you clearly see that people are asking for.
That's a great advantage of the fruity wines. And me, for example, if you ask me which bottle you take when you open a bottle for you and your wife, no doubt it's fruity Kabinett.
Shall we dive into something like this? Because I have a feeling that that expects me now, right?
Here I took 24 Kabinett, 7.5 alcohol.
7.5 alcohol.
Which is nothing. Bottled 4 weeks ago.
Oh, you can definitely smell that immediately. That's freshly bottled. It's very, very lovely.
10.4 acidity.
Oh, it smells just so useful and vibrant. It's like if I would have to give it a color, the smell a color, it would be green for me. This is so zest for life, you know. You feel like, okay, everything is blossoming, spring is starting. This is kind of lovely. Well, I see the point when you want to open a bottle with your wife to just kick off a lovely Friday evening, then on the summer terrace with view over the valley, then this is definitely the way to go, right? I mean, the acidity is striking. It's beautiful, like, but 10.4 you said?
Yeah.
I think you don't feel that actually. The sugar really improves the
and the low yield of the vintage 24 also brings more balance in the wine.
You were also extremely hit by frost here, or were you?
Not extremely, but we were hit by frost. Not extreme. Also, we could harvest 30% of the average of the last 10 years.
Okay.
30%. We have every wine we need, but every wine is in a smaller quantity than the years before.
And then,
for example, normally we bottle 6,000 liter, 8,000 bottles of Kabinett. This year we only bottled 4,000.
Okay. And this creates big problems for you in the markets, or how is it?
It was a luck that 22 and 23 we had good yields.
Yeah.
So we still have on stock, and I think we have enough before the next vintage will come. But now hope that it will not freeze anymore.
So that's something that you still feel like we are here in end of April, right? And you are. Are we okay? But because last year
it happened 22nd of April.
Yes, okay. And how did the 24 vintage then for you develop on? Because I think in some parts of the Mosel we had hail afterwards. In the Saar you were also affected by that, I assume.
We had a little bit of fungus, Peronospora, which was a problem, but we worked hard against the Peronospora, so we could save 30% harvest. And so we are happy. A lot of colleagues here in the Saar area, they have only 10-15% of normal harvest, and that's really hard. That is hard.
And the Peronospora, I heard like the humidity was the problem last year in most German wine regions, right? Is this also something?
Rain in summer. And, but if you see that it's only a small harvest because of the frost, then you work against it, and you do what you can to protect the last grapes what you have.
Doesn't make it easier, I guess, right? But I mean, this is what I heard from many colleagues around Europe, that the 2024 vintage was really challenging. And I mean, we always say like global warming, climate change, and then the assumption is getting just warmer and warmer. I think one of the big problems that people feel in recent years is that the weather extremes are getting just like more difficult to handle, right? So this is something we probably have to get used to. Beautiful wine. I'm really excited about this here, I must say. Unfortunately, it's not Friday afternoon yet, but maybe to round it off a bit. Our last question we have is always this: 5 years from now, where do you see yourselves, the winery?
I told you that I have a little summer house in Sweden, and I see me in 5 years sitting on my terrace in Sweden, drinking a bottle of Kabinett, Weingut 24. And my daughter is running the business. I will help her, of course, but I see me in a retired position in 5 years.
Yeah, summer house in Sweden. This is, doesn't sound like a too bad retirement, so to say. Thanks for having me here, and we're looking much forward to have you in Copenhagen in January at the Kuklam Wine Summit and taste more of your lovely wines there.